Hello, my name is Kate Mastronicola, and today I'm going to talk to you about response to intervention. So what is response to intervention? It is this really large concept that we're going to distill into just the main points today. But it is an increasingly intensive supplemental support or intervention program for students who are struggling in either reading, math, or both. It's something that is rolled out as a school-wide program, and everybody participates in a universal screener at the beginning of the year to create that baseline data. It's something where you have instructional programming that is then used. It should be evidence-based in tandem with routine progress monitoring to assess whether or not students are moving through their tiers and phasing out of supports needed, or moving the other direction through the tiers, needing more and more intensive supports. All of this should be part of a very clear plan for anyone who is part of the program. You have 3 tiers. The first tier is implemented by the general classroom teacher, and again, they're using research-based classroom interventions that will help students who are struggling. Tier 2 includes all of the interventions that could be part of Tier 1. This could be implemented by the general education teacher or a specialist. It just depends on what the program looks like at your particular school. Tier 1 and Tier 2 covers most of the students who may be struggling. Tier 3 is your most intensive. This is the last tier that you are utilizing support in before students are evaluated for ECE services. So this could be up to 5% of your students who really need this extra support. This is typically provided by an ECE teacher or a specialist or an interventionist, depending on what they are classified as at your particular district or school, but this is the most intensive part. You have a team that implements RTI, your classroom teachers who are Tier 1, your specialists or interventionists, ECE teachers could be Tier 2 and Tier 3, and then counselors and administration support all levels of response to intervention. So why RTI? This goes back to IDEA that came out in 2004. It stated that students who were being identified for ECE services needed more steps beforehand. More things needed to happen to identify those students that involved more than just an IQ test and the discrepancy model that used to be employed. So for about 30 years, RTI existed, but it was called a bunch of different things, and there was no standardization and no common terminology. So IDEA allowed for RTI to come into existence. So how does this connect to UDL? Well, both Universal Design for Learning and RTI are not checklists. These are specific processes that should be employed to help students. Both have somewhat flexible definitions. It's not a strict code of do this, this, and this. It's a here's how you could roll this out. It should account for learner variability. That is a tentpole tenet of UDL, and it's also critical for RTI success. And again, it increases inclusivity. UDL at its inception was about getting students with special needs included in the general population, increasing inclusivity. RTI also does the same. All those Tier 1 interventions are geared for keeping students in the classroom with their peers. There are some barriers to account for. If RTI is not implemented with consistency, it's not going to be successful. Scheduling can also be really, really tricky. In middle and high school, you have more departmentalization. Teachers are not necessarily on the same page, so you want to make sure that team that's rolling out RTI is really tight. You may also have barriers with staff, depending on how many people are teaching different subjects and getting kids what they need. Those are all real things to consider. Sometimes innovation can also feel stifled because everything has to be research-based, so you can't just adopt the latest and greatest trend without knowing that there is the research to back it up. Additionally, scope can feel limited if you are applying strategies to all students, not necessarily thinking about what individual students need. So you've got to make sure your interventions are targeted. Lastly, the universal screener doesn't always reflect the difference between underachievers and students with legitimate needs. So that is all critical when thinking about response to intervention. Here is my reference list. Hopefully this helped give you a quick snapshot of what response to intervention is. Thanks so much.